VSM Real Estate was born as Vasevich Schroeder Management, which stood for, Vasevich is my former partner Goran's last name and Schroeder is obviously mine. And the reason that we came up with that name, ironically, is because he wanted to brand himself where his last name was like a household name. And the example that he gave at the time was, I want Vasevich to be like Trump Tower. And then lo and behold, he gets elected president 6 years later. I don't think either of us saw that coming. But VSM was born, the idea really took foot in 2008. At the time, I was a hotel broker, and Goran, he was working at Best Buy for Business and had also been doing a few little entrepreneurial side hustles. And we had been introduced by a mutual friend. We went to a real estate investment seminar the first time that we met, and we really hit it off. I felt like a strong connection with him right away. And I remember going home and saying, I'm gonna make millions of dollars with this guy, I just know it. And about a year of us hanging out socially, and we just kind of became closer and closer as friends. And I ended up leaving my job as a hotel broker and working for Thomson Reuters selling legal research. And this is at the depths of the Great Recession. I helped Goran to get a job there, and while we were working there, we both had still a very strong entrepreneurial spirit as well as an interest in real estate. So we would be cube mates, and we would sit there and talk all the time about, you know, what do we really want to do, because this isn't what we want to do. We knew we didn't want to be in corporate America in a gray cubicle and doing those things. Now, that's not a knock on Thomson Reuters. They are a great company. They paid me well. I had no complaints or regrets about my time there, but I just knew it wasn't really like the best fit for me. So Goran had owned about 5 rental properties, and I didn't own any. I just had the house that I lived in, and he brought to me a condo in Minneapolis at the Arches at Arts building. And so my very first investment property was 2525 3rd Avenue, unit number 1 at the Arches at Arts. We bought this condo out of foreclosure for roughly $35,000, down quite a bit from its previous high of $125,000. And from there, other people in the building said, oh, well, how did you guys find a tenant so quickly? Because we placed a tenant immediately. We said, well, we just put ads on Craigslist and, you know, we did our thing. And they said, well, would you be willing to help us? So we didn't actually start a property management company. Our first handful of clients basically nudged us into doing it. And so lo and behold, we went from not even conceiving of having a property management company to having about 20 clients. At that point, I told Goran, I'm like, we should really make this into a serious business. So we worked out the terms and of everything, of the agreement between us, and then we kicked it off. I went out and got my broker's license, which is a requirement to owning a property management company or owning a real estate company at all. And VSM effectively was born from a cubicle in Thomson Reuters, and for a year, Goran and I both worked full-time doing that and doing this on the side. So it was a lot of 70 and 80-hour weeks to get this thing off the ground. And then once we got to a point where we were making about $4,000 a month, which was basically $2,000 a month each, I decided, all right, well, that's enough of an indicator that I think it's time to let go of the safety net and quit my job and decide to do this full-time. Starting VSM itself was easy and fun, but making the decision to leave your job where you've been making $100,000 a year was actually the more difficult decision, because of course I had all the benefits and 401ks and stock purchase plans and all this other stuff, and I was going to forsake all of it in order to follow my ambition. So the biggest obstacle in that was just the trepidation about whether or not I would have enough savings to cover the difference between what my lifestyle cost and how much money I was going to be making until the business started to catch up to my lifestyle. The good news is removing the safety net motivated me tremendously, and we actually went and spent we each had $10,000 when we started this, And we spent that immediately on buying a building in St. Paul, and we actually went out and borrowed another $30,000 to put a $50,000 down payment on a contract for deed to buy the Bonnie Jean building. And then we ran up our credit cards to buy office furniture, and I put other things on the card too, like marketing to try and get more leads. And I treated each lead that we got like it was a brick of gold, and I would call them first. I would be Johnny on the spot. I would never let them go with anyone else. So for the first couple years, I probably closed 95 to 98% of all the leads that came in because I needed to survive. I would say that my hunger was at the highest it ever had been. I reduced all my operating expenses to bare bones as much as I could, sold my nice car, and bought a little Honda Civic that got great gas mileage and could reduce my overall cost of living. I mean, there was a lot of sacrifices that were made in order to be able to survive that so crucial first couple of years. Partnering with Goran was easily the best decision that I've made in my life. One thing that I really gleaned from Goran was he was an entrepreneur through and through. I was somebody who had entrepreneurial ambitions, and I remember the conversation that we had that was kind of the catalyst for me taking this leap. And he said to me, he goes, "Ryan, you're smarter than just about anybody else that I've ever met. Do you realize if someone else can do it, why can't you do it?" And just a small little statement like that of if someone else can do it, why can't you do it, was really eye-opening to me, because then I started to think about it and I was like, well, I'm not any less capable than someone else. It just really comes down to the courage, if not audacity, to think that you are able to do it and then going and doing it. So there's a little expression, there's nothing to it but to do it. And that's really very true. I mean, I didn't know what I was doing when I started. I mean, I didn't have a roadmap. I didn't know I would end up where I am today. None of this was figured out. All I really had was the ambition and the desire to make a bunch of money for my own business. I do. I feel like it was always present, that I always had high hopes of owning my own business. I always had a strong interest in real estate. I would say that I really started to notice my entrepreneurial drive around 10 years old. I would love to just play Monopoly with the kids in the neighborhood and whip up on them. I was washing cars and mowing lawns and doing anything that I could to start little side hustles to get paid. I was working for my dad at 12 years old, and even through college I worked 3 jobs and put myself largely through college, and my parents did help out with quite a bit as well, but I knew from a young age that I had high hopes and that I was going to achieve them. I think what Goran really brought to the table though was just that last little nudge, that little bit of courage needed, somebody to believe in you, because I'll say one of the actual hardest parts about being an entrepreneur and taking that leap is that your friends and your family are going to tell you not to. They're going to want you to be safe and secure, and it's hard to say if that's a product of their own insecurities or lack of desire to do those things, or if it's more about they don't want to see you fail. But I would actually say that was the biggest obstacle in my way, was the poo-pooing from the people that I loved and cared about. When I look back at the old VSM, some of it actually seems a little bit laughable now because we really didn't know what we were doing. An example is, I started with our first property management agreement as something that I just Googled and found online, and then made a couple of changes to it to make it ours. And it grew from that original 2-page document to now a 17-page document. So it's just an example of how experience will dictate how you do things and how you improve along the way. I expect that that'll continue to be the case as I learn and glean knowledge from past experiences. But looking back, I am very proud of early days VSM to today. I'd say the number one thing that I would do differently is I never would have outsourced the construction and maintenance aspects of the business. I would have kept it all in-house from day one, because there's such a symbiotic relationship between the two that having it outsourced to a third-party company, while it did help us to get started, it gave us a little bit of a boost to not have to think about that. We lost some of the control of our business and kind of had to end up handing that over to a third-party entity. And now that we had it back in-house and under our control, I just know that that would have been the better way of doing it in the long run. I believe that starting your own business is one of the most worthy pursuits in a person's life. I'm extremely proud of everything that we have accomplished, and aside from being a father, that's the other major source of pride in my life. And I will say there's that Henry Ford quote where he says, "He who believes he can and he who believes he can't are both right." And I would just say, if you have aspirations of starting your own business, believe in yourself, have the audacity to believe that it can be done, and do it. And also seek a couple of good mentors, people who have done things that you're aspiring to do. Keep them close, have your ears open and listen to their sage wisdom, because they can probably help you to prevent some missteps along the way.